All right, I'm going to start tonight's conference call. Welcome everybody to tonight's conference call. We have Craig Arsenault from WP Carey. He's going to be presenting tonight a presentation called "It's Not Your Parents' Retirement." If I can ask everybody that's on the line to mute your phones now until the end, where we'll do Q&A, that would be much appreciated so that we can keep the background sounds out. And we'll go ahead and do a Q&A at the end. Tonight's presentation will basically be about the challenges that face baby boomers and people heading into retirement as well as preparing for it. It's not as simple as maybe your parents' retirement. People are living longer, retiring earlier without pension. And that poses some challenges, and that's what this presentation aims to answer. So I will go ahead and turn the mic over to Craig Arsenault. Are you there?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you. So I'll go ahead and mute my phone. If everybody else could do the same, we're going to give the floor to Craig.
Well, thank you, Neil, and thank you all for attending our presentation. It's Not Your Parents' Retirement. My name is Craig Arsenault, and I am the first Vice President of WP Carey, Mid-Atlantic East Territory, and I'm pleased to be your host today. Today, we are going to be discussing how retirement landscapes differ, and more importantly, differ from that of our parents and our grandparents. Given today's complex financial environment, government programs, uncertainty, and longevity. Before planning your retirement portfolio, it's important to take these factors into consideration and really take a thorough look at today's challenges in order to prepare for tomorrow. It's not meant to scare anybody. There are some statistics on here, as Neil mentioned, where people are living longer, people are retiring earlier, people are spending more time in retirement. Those are all good things. Living long isn't bad. Running out of money when you're old is bad. So that's what we're going to try to address today. Because today's retirement is so different from retiring in the 1950s, we'll be talking in depth and looking at some of the critical factors that have changed over time. Specifically, the ones that you see here of life expectancy. We're spending more time in retirement now that people are living longer. The economy, how the turbulent environment over the past several years has affected our portfolios and our way of life. And really nobody was immune to that. Government assistance and how Social Security is becoming a real concern for future retirees. Inflation rates and their effect on purchasing power over the course of your retirement and how that's going to affect you. And rising costs, especially as it relates to your retirement and those new costs that you do incur when you're retired. First off, today is more challenging than ever before to plan for retirement, and Americans are feeling unprepared and fearful. In fact, 67% are worried about not having enough money. 61% fear outliving their money more than they fear death. And 84% of 401k plan sponsors said in a recent survey that only some or very few employees will be financially prepared for retirement. A few shocking and startling statistics for sure. Now, here's to a long life. Let's take a look at our longevity and how our years in retirement have changed over time. Compared to 1950, we're living more than a decade longer today. Despite the significant increase in age, our average retirement age has only increased 1 year. So you have obviously a big gap there. And the way that retiring, people just retire differently. Retiring used to be you worked till you couldn't. You retired for a couple of years. You had a pension. And then you passed away. And unfortunately, that didn't sound like a great way to retire. I would rather choose the more current form of retiring, where you're actually not working until you can't, and you're enjoying your retirement. But those are the facts here. And in 2008, there were roughly 33 million Americans between the ages of 55 and 64. It is expected to reach 43 million in 2020. About 10,000 to 12,000 people a day are hitting that baby boomer age, 65. Put on your safety belts. Retirement planning is, further complicated by the economy, as we all know. Unemployment, and these numbers are a little outdated, as you can see by the footnotes below, but 8.3% of Americans are currently unemployed, compared to 4.5% in the 50s. Even if you are employed, there are other considerations. The U.S.'s 100 largest corporate pension plans were underfunded by over $217 billion in 2008. I think that pretty much everybody may know somebody who had a pension that was either and it says supplementary benefits were pared down or even removed, and forced furloughs and time off. Living in the D.C. area, as we all do, or most of us do, we know that story all too well. And how secure is your Social Security? These are some pretty scary statistics when you think about it. A bleak outlook, it mentions, and 76% of workers plan to rely on Social Security as a source of income in retirement, and only 35% of Americans expressed confidence in the future of Social Security. So there's obviously a little bit of a gap there. If 76% of people plan on counting on it, yet only 35% actually plan on it being there in its current state. How secure is Social Security? Again, the sustainability of Social Security benefits becomes less and less likely for future retirees. I think that this may be one of the more shocking statistics you'll see in the presentation today. In 1950, a retiree's benefit was paid for by 16 workers. So you had 16 workers that were really shouldering the load here. 2011, a retiree's benefits were down to only 2.9 workers. So 2.9 current employees were covering the benefits of one worker, whereas it was 16 just in 1950. It's projected that by 2036, a retiree's benefits are projected to be paid by only two workers, or 2.1 workers. I find that possibly to be a little bit on the high side, because if it went from 16 to 2.9 from 1950 to 2011, who knows what could happen in the future going forward. Given the effects of the recent financial situation, the government has had to make borrowing more attractive in order to help stimulate the economy by increasing the money supply. This, in turn, increases the inflation rate, which can quickly erode a retirement portfolio's purchasing power if not taken into account. And prior to 1960, as you can see, inflation was still something to consider when planning, for retirement. But its effects were marginal at best when compared to today's rate. In fact, the average inflation rate from 1914 to 1959 was 2.6%. From 1960 to today, it's up to 4%. And at a 4% inflation rate, the cost of living will double in only 18 years. So, be sure to take this into account, especially as we approach an average, retirement now of 20 years. Although inflation generally affects the price of all goods and services, there are some more specific expenses that outpace the rise of inflation. Unfortunately, the most aggressively priced goods and services are those that affect retirees, such as gas, medical costs. As retirees have more time on their hands, many travel more frequently, and with the increase of gas consumption, an increase of almost 10% in 2011 alone, gas prices are a very significant expense to consider in retirement. Another significant expense, obviously, that targets retirees is medical costs. Medical costs, which increased to 9.2% in 2011. In fact, out-of-pocket medical expenses needed at age 65 is projected to increase 68% from 2009 to 2018, leading to retirees needing over $500,000 for these expenses during their retirement. On the other topics, aside from just medical costs and gas, college tuition. I have two young children and one on the way in November, and I look at the cost of a college education, and it's pretty scary. Your financial advisor can show you these college cost calculators that show you what to expect for a child that's going to be starting college in 15 or 16 or 17 or 18 years. And I looked at one just a week ago because we have a new baby coming. And in 18 years, it's going to cost about $400,000 for a 4-year public education. It's about a 9% inflation rate on college tuition. That was pretty alarming, personally. Now, a considerable expense affecting many during the course of their retirement is long-term health care, such as nursing homes and in-home assistance. It's anticipated that in 2020, due to the rapid retirement of baby boomers, approximately 1 in 3 workers will be faced with providing some form of long-term care for their boomer parents. It's imperative to plan for this expense, as about 75% of single people and 50% of couples spend their entire savings within 1 year of entering a nursing home. I'll repeat that. 75% of single people and 50% of couples spend their entire savings within 1 year of entering a nursing home. If there's one key takeaway from this webinar today, I hope that you come away with an understanding that there's more to planning and updating a retirement portfolio than simply keeping up with inflation rate. Simply keeping up with inflation rate doesn't secure a safe retirement. So what do we do with all this information, and how can we plan ahead given these variable costs and situations that may or may not affect us during retirement? And in the event that our future pension plans and Social Security do not meet retirement needs, it's more important than ever to actively invest in your retirement portfolio, as holding on to cash alone now won't suffice given the current interest rates and the interest rates that have been rather consistent in the last 5 years. Unfortunately, cash equivalent investments are not really meeting interest rates as well. In fact, money market funds currently yield less than 1% in many cases. 1-year CDs, and these numbers are a little outdated, yield 1%, and the 5-year CDs are right around 1.8%, and it shows you those as of February 2012. An investment in money markets funds is not insured or guaranteed by the FDIC or any other government agency. Although money market funds seek to preserve the value of your investment at $1 per share, it is possible to lose money by investing your money in money market funds. Now, the importance of a financial advisor. Again, I started this off, I didn't want to scare people. Again, living long is not a bad thing. Retiring earlier is not a bad thing. Spending 20, 30, 35 years in retirement, these aren't bad things. It's just formulating a plan and, more importantly, sticking to that plan. According to a recent survey conducted by T. Rowe Price, 40% of adults, 42% of adults today feel that participation in only a 401k plan is adequate. This high percentage suggests that many Americans today simply just don't understand what their financial options are and what saving for retirement really means. Additionally, the echo boomers, who are about 32 years in age, are putting the majority of their assets into investments held in defined contribution plans, unlike defined benefit plans of old, which translated into a pension-like income stream. The defined contribution plans are just that. The sole responsibility of adding the money to the plan is on the shoulders of the investor or the employee. This generation will need the advice of financial advisors more than any other generation before. It's imperative to not only deciding a plan and sticking to a plan, but reevaluating the plan as well. It's interesting and it's rather fascinating. I've been in this industry for 11 years now to see what the certain tools financial advisors have in not just coming to a plan, but updating your plan, because it should be a living, breathing plan. Things change, needs change, retirement income needs change, and you work with a great financial advisor with Neil and GB in their office, and they have some pretty great technology to help you plan for retirement, and more importantly, keep and stay on the right track. Considering all these issues we've talked about today, I'd like to share with you how spending time with your financial advisor, again, may help you plan for your future so you can be prepared to enjoy your retirement. Think about your current age and retirement goals and modify your current retirement plan accordingly. Reevaluate that plan on a continued basis. Ask about particular investment strategies that may be worth considering. There may be investments out there now, be it alternative investments, different types of investments that are relatively new and something that you may never have invested in before. Evaluate your current opportunities to supplement your retirement plan, including those provided through your company and the government. Plan for potential health care and medical expenses. for you and for your spouse, and stay on track so you can enjoy that that long, fruitful retirement that everybody would like. I guess, Neil, I want to thank everybody for joining today. It again wasn't meant to scare people, and I hope that this presentation has helped. If anything else, helped you look at your retirement a little bit, and the retirement that you're seeing now is very different from that of your parents and the generation prior. And hopefully you have a little bit less apprehension knowing that there are things that you can do. Again, I encourage you to discuss these challenging topics with financial advisors so you can empower yourself with a financial plan that works and helps not only meet but hopefully exceed your retirement goals. Neil, I can open it up for questions, or if you'd like to jump on and discuss anything, I'd be happy to address.
Sounds good, Craig. No, I appreciate that. That was very insightful. We'll open it up to Q&A. If anybody has their first question, we can go ahead and take that.
Yes, Neil, this is Patrick Simeon. How you doing, Craig?
How are you, sir?
All right, I'm doing fine. Listen, I was looking at that's the first two slides, as far as the Social Security. The numbers you're referring to, 2011, 2009, I guess to support everybody that's on Social Security, versus 2026.1 people.
Yeah, I just went back to it. I think it's slide number 11.
Yeah, and my question is, last night I had a little meeting with GB and Neil talking about financial security, and one of the things was, I guess, echo boomers and the millennials and their projections of they're going to provide more income economy, so that we would have to look at the long-term view on that. So my question is, that scenario, how does is that true? That security, why is not the basically those people are going to have working more and longer, and put more into the economy. That means that might be more healthy than what we.
Neil, I'm putting out there a little bit.
Yeah, I heard a couple of, and I think the address was what can kind of make this better.
He's basically regarding how basically the newer workers that are coming into the field, there's going to be a lot more of them. I believe it's the age group of 30 to 40. I got to look at that update again, but that's going to kind of reprop the Social Security system so that folks heading into Social Security, not exactly right now, should be okay later on. The Social Security system will be a little bit better off in the future. That's what you're getting at, right, Pat?
Yes.
Yeah, and I mean the one way to do it is we need more employees, we need more babies. I'm trying to do my part. We've got our third on the way, but it's just such a great unknown. It's just such a great unknown that you have this mass amount of people retiring and turning their lives from accumulating wealth to now distributing their wealth. And it's a very frustrating time to do that, because you have, if you're a 65-year-old today and you've been investing for 30, 35, 40 years since you started working, there's really never been a point in that client's or investor's time frame where if equities became too volatile, there was always relatively safer or less volatile securities, be it fixed income, treasury, money market, that generated an attractive yield. And right now, when the equity markets are at the all-time high, the fixed income market is where it is, and those so-called safe harbors really aren't as safe or as fruitful as they once were. But yeah, the on Social Security topic, it's just such a great unknown. What will happen? I know personally, I'm 37 this year. I'm not going to be counting on Social Security. I'm taking other means. If it's there, great. But I'm not going to be counting on it. And I just think that's a huge shift in mentality. You know, my mother's 68. My father passed away, and Social Security was just really an anchor for them. It was always the anchor. I'm not counting on it to be the anchor, or if it is, I just hope the water's not too deep.
Thanks, Craig. That was good. You guys, is there any other questions out there regarding this? And I believe that's going into the basically tying into the generation X and Y as to having a bigger overall population that would help support the Social Security Administration. And that's definitely up for debate. And I agree with what you're saying, Craig. It's just an unknown, but it's definitely something that is out there that looks more promising for Social Security, that's for sure.
Yep.
I have a question.
Sure.
Can you hear me?
Did you state your name? Yeah.
This is Leisha. I emailed about
Okay.
this, say what it was. Basically, the markets are doing very well, but I'm concerned that a major correction could be around the corner. Sorry, guys, about the noise. So how would you recommend those who are maybe planning to retire within 2 years or less readjusting their portfolio to, of course you can't tell the future, but how would you suggest, some kind of a safeguard for your assets in your, retirement in light of a possible correction very close to your retirement date?
Neil, I'll leave that one up for you.
Okay. Well, Leisha, obviously, as you get closer and closer to retirement, you want to make sure your portfolio is diversified in the sense that you're not too heavily invested in equities. I know that in your case, considerably most of your assets are held at the TSP, so it's a little bit more challenging there because you have really only 5 funds to go into, and your more conservative options at the TSP are not necessarily the best options out there. But with that being said, I definitely think you want to start to look more at using a little bit more of the conservative options like GNF, or using funds like the life cycle funds, like your L funds. And that's about as best as you can do given the current situation with the TSP. But as you move into retirement, there's a lot of options that you can do. And there are several fixed income options that you would probably be looking at to subsidize some of the income that you're not getting from work. And that's kind of the side where Craig Arsenal's team comes in. He runs an alternative investment that deals with real estate, and that provides income to your portfolio that's different from stock market or general fixed income bond type investments. So there's definitely a lot of options on the outside world, but in these next couple years with your particular situation, you're going to want to use some of the more conservative options at TSP, and I would look more toward the life cycle funds. Is that helpful?
I got it. In other words, just stay put for a little while. Okay.
Okay. Yep.
Gentlemen,
Neil, I have a question.
Yeah, this is Gloria and Carlton Campbell, gentlemen.
Okay. Hi.
Question for you. At this point, if you have children who are entering their time to go to college, and you haven't had an opportunity to save for them, what vehicle would be best to pay for their college education? Would it be better to diversify yourself out of some of the stocks, use some of your retirement savings, if you're over 60 years old and no longer have to pay a penalty, sell real estate? What would you say is probably the best means of helping them pay for their college education rather than have them have high debt and loans?
Well, it's hard to speak in generalities without, looking at your personal situation. I know GB handles your glorious account, and he'd probably be better suited to answer that. But in general, there's many different options to pay for school, and there's ways to be creative about it when there's no built-up savings. Some of the most popular choices would be home equity lines of credit. Rates are very low right now. One can access the equity in their home at a very cheap rate and also get a tax deduction for it. So that's one very attractive option right now. A second, if there's no equity in the home, would be possibly a loan on your retirement account. So if you're working, you have, let's say in this case, we'll say a TSP, you have the ability to take up to $50,000 out of your TSP via a loan, which is non-taxable and non-penalty, even if you're under the age of 59 and a half, and access a loan that way with a low interest rate that gets actually credited back to your account. But those are two probably attractive ways if you're in a situation where you didn't have the funding. The third, and probably the most obvious one, is to definitely apply for financial aid. I think folks might be surprised as to how much they could actually be eligible for, and to at least go that route prior to actually the first two. But those would be the top three choices that I would be looking at first before taking any other measures as far as, spending money in your accounts.
Okay, when you said financial aid, are you talking about like car loans?
Say that again?
When you're mentioning financial aid, are you talking about the parental loans, the PAL loans?
Yeah. All the different forms of financial aid under the system. There's grants, there's loans. Depending on the income level of the parents, there's different eligibilities under that. So yes, we'd be talking about what financial aid has to offer.
Thank you.
Yep, no problem. Any other questions?
Question? Can you hear me?
Yes.
That's Howard Funke. I know this is not so much what we go to GB for, but you brought it up in your presentation, so let me ask you what you think about it. I don't at the moment have long-term care insurance because I had it for about 10 years when I worked with the government, and I felt like it turned into a huge bait and switch kind of program. I was very, very unhappy with it. And when I retired, I just canceled it. I thought it was excessively costly. The cost was going up consistently from year to year, and the benefits seemed to be diminishing. And I've now had some people try to sell me on long-term care insurance, and I really don't feel like it's a good way to spend my money. And I'm wondering how you feel about it. And I know it's an issue that's full of incredible unknowns and big risks, but I'm wondering what you think about it.
Sure. Well, Craig, I'm interested to hear what you know about long-term care and what your thoughts are before I would go into mine. Do you have any thoughts on long-term care?
Oh, I really don't. I mean, I have many thoughts on them. I wish any of them were clear or would help anybody, however. I know that I was in the same position. I have it through my work. It is one of those costs that does seem excessive. It does seem like the benefits seem to decrease while the costs go up, which is going obviously in the wrong direction. But it's also one of those things that, now one of the slides that I showed, I think it said 75% of people will burn through their entire retirement savings in a year or two if something does happen and they are in assisted living facilities. So, at this point, there's just no silver bullet for long-term care. I don't believe. I'm not in that industry, so I don't really know it very well. I know it on a personal standpoint, but I do sympathize with that comment because I pay for it myself, and it does seem like something that the benefits do keep going down as the costs go up, and it is one of those things that unfortunately, I know that there's too many horror stories out there of people needing it and then they don't have it. I don't think anybody's ever looked back and said, I wish I had less insurance.
Sure. No, that's helpful, and I think what I'd probably add to that, Howard, is I think it is definitely more of a case-by-case scenario. Wrapping up long-term care in a general kind of format would be tough to talk about, but I think you want to look at it in the sense of, first of all, family history. What is the family history with mental diseases, Alzheimer's, schizophrenia, things like that, or just other things that would impact your health down the road and your likelihood of needing long-term care. Obviously, if you have a high risk for that is definitely something that's going to be looming on your mind, and maybe the price that you're paying for that is worth just bringing your stress level down in retirement. The second would be estate planning. Do you have children? Is one of your biggest goals to leave money to the estate and for legacy planning? Obviously, a long-term care needs would eat really far into one's estate if they were planning on leaving money to their children through their estate. So those are all other aspects that I would look into before putting in long-term care, because someone can always choose to self-insure and run the risk. But like Craig mentioned, the risks are pretty great, especially if your goals are to leave an estate and maybe fully paid off home and things like that to your children, which could easily be eaten through in the case of needing long-term care. So I don't think there's an easy answer for that, and I think it's a case-by-case basis, and I think you need to look at the price compared to self-insuring and taking a look at with GB what makes sense in your particular case. Does that help?
Yeah, thanks very much. It helped a bit. I'm not thought of all those things. Anyway, appreciate it.
Sure. Any other questions?
Yeah, Neil, this is Patrick. I just wanted to follow up with Howard's question, and I just want to say, Howard, I had the same situation. You had long-term care, and my wife and I in the federal government. Basically, we had it for about 10 years. We were trying to do it together, and I think after about 5 years, changed, and then the price went way up, double, and they want us to pay more to keep the same amount of. And my mother-in-law actually had cancer, and so we had long-term care, and it turned out in the hospital with her that it didn't start. So it came where she had to go home, and they started it, and then it was like I think we had to wait 90 days. We had to pay up. We were not living. I mean, we were living away from her and all this. We had to pay all the bills, and then how to come in. We had a lot of red tape with that, and then we just felt very frustrated with the process. So we're not lawyers, able to figure this stuff out. Anybody else would have had this situation. It would have been a nightmare.
Patrick, you're kind of cutting out. I don't know if there's anything you can do to readjust your phone there.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm just saying that she didn't collect part of her money because she passed away before that happened, but it was like a very expensive exercise. And I know that's the right answer, but that's I'm kind of in the same category with Howard, and I believe, I don't know if it's worth it in that. I understand what Craig is saying, that safety blanket, but I don't know if it really is, honestly. That's my thought.
Well, thanks, Patrick. That's insightful. Do we have anybody else that has a question? I think we'll take maybe one more question and probably close out Q&A here. Is that it? Okay. Well, I think that was a pretty nice presentation by you, Craig. Thank you very much for your work tonight. We appreciate that.
Happy to do it, and thank you everybody for joining.
Okay. All right, I'm going to wish everyone good night. We will see everyone, I'm sure, in the office for your upcoming reviews. If you have any further questions, or if we didn't fully explain everything that you wanted to hear tonight, especially in the case maybe of long-term care, feel free to bring that up in your, your annual or biannual reviews when you come into the office. We'd be happy to discuss that with you guys. Thank everyone for attending tonight, and have a good evening.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you.
No problem.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Good night.